Denver Broncos legend and current Buffalo Bills edge rusher Von Miller was recently back in the Mile High City for a charity event for Von's vision at the Centennial Airport. Multiple Broncos players were at the event, and so was 9 News insider Mike Kliss, where he caught up with Von for a few minutes. It really feels like Broncos country never got to say a proper goodbye to Von, as he was very suddenly traded away to the Los Angeles Rams at the trade deadline in 2021, where he ultimately went on to win his second Super Bowl ring. But he will always have that deep connection for Broncos country for his 11 years here, where he won Super Bowl 50. He's the Broncos all-time sack leader with 110 and a half, and I'm fully confident that once his playing days are over, Von Miller will most definitely return to the Mile High City, and if not get his number retired, he'll certainly get his name inducted into the Broncos Ring of Fame. Now, his number will probably go down similarly to that of Champ Bailey's, where it's only brought out in very special circumstances. I think the last time somebody wore number 24 for the Broncos was, I want to say, Pac-Man Jones, and I believe he got Champ's permission to wear it. So I feel like number 58 will only be worn again here in Denver under very, very special circumstances. Now, Von talked about his outlook for the Broncos entering the 2023 season to Mike Kliss, and it's very clear in this interview that he still has a deep emotional connection with Broncos country and the Denver Broncos organization. So let's take a listen to what Von had to say here.
What do you think of the Broncos, what they've done?
Oh, this is the question I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
I love the Broncos. George Payton, the job that he's done, bringing in McGlinchey, bringing in Russ. We got the best corner in the league with Patrick Surtain. We got the best safety in the league. And if he's not one, he's number 2 with Justin Simmons. Our defense has always been stacked. I'm a big fan of Brandon Browning. A big fan of Randy Gregory. Big fan of Javonte Williams. Big fan of Russell Wilson. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick. All of these guys, man.
You're still using the word "we," I noticed.
It'll always be we. I spent 11 years here. It'll always be we. But I just have a different outlook of watching this team. I'll always be a fan of the Denver Broncos. I know how they run things. I know the culture. I know the team chemistry. Had a up and down season last year. This year it'll be totally different. I'm excited for those guys. All they have to do is beat the Kansas City Chiefs one time, and they'll be able to win the division 100%.
It'll always be we. That one hits different, man. Von, although he is an outside observer right now and watching us and cheering us on from a distance, he will always be a Denver Bronco. He will always share that deep connection with Broncos country. He will always be our Super Bowl 50 MVP. And I'm going to age myself a little bit as a younger Broncos fan because I was not alive when we won our 2 Super Bowls in 1998 and 1999. I was born in December of 99. So Von is the main reason why I got to experience my team winning a Super Bowl. And after that, his devotion to the organization, despite the turmoil and having to deal with several different head coaches and several different defensive coordinators, man, what Von Miller stuck through for this organization, I will always be grateful and always be indebted to him for that, because Von Miller is my favorite player to ever put on a Broncos uniform. I know that ages me quite a bit as a younger Broncos fan, but he's one of the main reasons why I fell in love with the game of football, and for that, I will always be indebted to him. But hearing Von talk about the Broncos and saying the word "we" and describing all of the players on our team that he feels like are going to make a big impact, from Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, to Javonte Williams, Brandon Browning. I thought that was pretty funny. And Randy Gregory. I mean, he just goes on and on. Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain. It's clear that he still follows this team and keeps up with this team. And I'm not going to lie, it's going to be really weird matching up against Von Miller in Week 10 and seeing him on the other side. That one's going to be a bit weird for me, because if he gets a sack, I'll probably want to naturally cheer, but at the same time, I won't, because it's our team, you know? So Von's a guy that will always have my support, even as he went to the LA Rams and won his second Super Bowl ring, and now he attempts to get his third with the Buffalo Bills. I'm so supportive of Von Miller. and I will always, always be grateful for everything he did for the Mile High City. Now, I do feel like his departure from Denver was very tough, especially because after he left Denver, he went on to have some pretty heavy success. Although he has dealt with some injuries the past couple of years, those injuries have really been freak injuries. Last year, he tore his ACL while playing on the slit film turf in Detroit, and prior to that, he popped a tendon in his foot here in Denver in 2020, right before the season started on the Broncos slit film practice turf. So a lot of Vaughn's injuries can really be attributed to crappy field and not so much anything else, age or anything like that. Vaughn is still proven to be in top tier physical shape. And I just feel like in his last years in Denver, he did not fit that Vic Fangio scheme at all. Derek Wolfe talked about it, man. Vic Fangio did not use Von Miller to his maximum potential. And same with Derek Wolfe himself. Derek talked about how in previous years, one way that Vaughn accumulated so many of his sacks and one way that Derek Wolfe and Von Miller had so much success together was pass rushing stunts. Now, for those who are not familiar, a stunt is basically where two defensive linemen cross paths with each other. The penetrator, which predominantly was Derek Wolfe, he usually has to distract both the tackle and the guard, while the looper, who was usually Von Miller, would come back around inside to beat the guard for a sack. Vic Fangio basically did not believe in running stunts, especially with Von Miller and Derek Wolfe. And that was really, really frustrating for Derek Wolfe because he feels like both of those guys made their hay in their career on pass rush stunts, and Vic Fangio took away one of their best weapons in their arsenal. So between that and just overall not being asked to be a pure pass rusher in certain situations, you saw Vaughn having to be dropped back in coverage in the Vic Fangio scheme way too often. So he didn't fit the Vic Fangio scheme at all, and personally, it just feels like Vic Fangio did not like Von Miller. So that made the departure between Von Miller and the Denver Broncos, that made it a lot tougher for us fans because I feel like it felt like the team chose Vic Fangio over Von Miller in a sense. And although we did use some of the draft capital in the Von Miller trade to send to Seattle for the Russell Wilson deal, also, though, we ended up with basically Nick Bonito and Luke Wattenberg in exchange for Von Miller. Who would you rather have, Nick Bonito and Luke Wattenberg, or a first ballot Hall of Fame edge rusher? You tell me, Broncos country. And on top of that, adding insult to injury for me, the Broncos had a chance to bring back Von Miller in the 2022 offseason and free agency. Instead, they went out and paid Randy Gregory, who has been injury prone throughout his career, and they haven't exactly been freak injuries. I do feel like Gregory's off the field issues are completely behind him. That was mostly due to mental health issues more than anything else. So I do feel like that's all behind Randy Gregory, but just based on injuries alone, he hasn't been able to stay on the field. And yes, he's not getting near as much guaranteed money as Von Miller would have commanded, and he is on a shorter contract length than Von Miller, but you have to wonder, man, what type of impact Von Miller would have on the team this year in the first year under Sean Payton, and with Vance Joseph back as defensive coordinator, whose defensive scheme Von Miller thrived in. You really have to wonder. I'm really hoping Randy Gregory returns on investment this year. Otherwise, man, the decision to pay Randy Gregory rather than bring back Von Miller was a big mistake, because it's very apparent by the way Von's talking here that he would have returned. Even though George Payton traded him away, he was still very complimentary of him here. He still has a lot of respect for George Payton as a GM, so I genuinely feel like Von Miller would have happily returned to the Denver Broncos and probably would have taken a few less dollars to do so. Because also, think about it. Von's two kids are here in Denver. At the time, of course, he only had one, but still, Von's kids are here in Denver. So Von would have probably taken less money to be able to stay here and be around his kids. It really it really rubs me the wrong way that George Paton went out and paid Randy Gregory instead of at least offering to bring back Von Miller, because based on how I heard it, the Broncos didn't even reach out to Von Miller's agent about a potential return. That hurts. That really rubbed me the wrong way, and that's one of the biggest criticisms that I will have for George Paton's tenure as a Denver Broncos GM. I give him less criticism for trading for Russell Wilson, obviously signing him to a massive extension before he'd even played it down with the team. That can turn some heads, but with the Russell Wilson trade, almost every other GM in the NFL would have made that same trade. We just heard recently that the Eagles would have made that same trade. So I'm not going to knock on George Paton for that one, but I am going to knock him for trading away Von Miller, basically only getting Luke Wattenberg and Nick Benito in return, and then completely passing on the opportunity to right your wrong, and then going out and making another foul by paying Randy Gregory. That, in my opinion, is George Paton's biggest screw up as Denver Broncos GM to this point. So I'm curious, Broncos country, do you guys feel like Von Miller's outlook on the Denver Broncos is fair? He genuinely feels that if the team can beat the Chiefs just once, that we may win the division. Now, I feel like that's just optimistic Von being optimistic Von. He's always taken that mindset to where if the Broncos just do this and this and this, they will win the division. If they just beat the Chiefs, they will win the division. I don't think it's going to be that simple. I do feel like the Chiefs are probably still destined to win the division, but I do feel like if we can get at least one victory on the Kansas City Chiefs this year, depending on how the rest of our season goes, we could be in good position to make the playoffs. And who knows, we could face off against Von Miller and the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. That would be something. So I'm curious, guys, how do you guys feel about Von Miller still using the words "we" when describing the Denver Broncos? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are two free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out to fellow members of Broncos country, just like you and me. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.